We're facing a global crisis over declining biodiversity, and we're facing a global crisis over the failure to come to a multilateral binding agreement around greenhouse gas emissions and the impact that has on the planet. So one of the problems is that the framework within which the negotiations are based is all about the idea that nature is something that is quantifiable in a commodity sense and in a market sense, and that you attach cash value. So there's a lot of effort at the moment to do the costing of ecosystem services, as it's often referred to. The issue that we're having in the biodiversity crisis is the overuse, but the failure of both the social relationships to constrain overuse, but also the sense of valuing nature for what it is, and understanding the reciprocity, understanding the dependence. I mean, in a Buddhist sense, it's all things are interlinked. If you use up the water, then you're going to not survive. It's not possible. If you break down the ecosystem and it collapses, then you're not going to have food. The oxygen that the tree breathes is the same oxygen that I breathe. And in fact, the tree and I are not actually separate in our construction and our composition. And when I die, my body will feed the tree, just as the tree may also provide heat when I burn the wood. So those reciprocal relationships are very different from this idea that we're going to cost out what nature is worth and then put a price on it, and then it's going to be a commodity negotiation. The fundamental issue is about greed and about human desires. It's not about economics. It's not about, I mean, you can say it's about that, but what is the overconsumption? And how do we get to the point where some people who live in one part of the world overconsume resources that come from a completely other part of the world that they never see? Now, that's a very different reality from indigenous peoples, where the resources they use are the ones that they rely on, and that they have intimate. It's that relationship between the animal, the insect, the reptile, the tree, and the person. You may be named after that. You may have sacred types of relationships with that animal. You may have histories. You may have family stories. There's multiple binding interactions between humans and the natural world until we got into this industrial, post-industrial state where the idea that we are the master and that you can extract as much as you want without the consequence. But you never have rights without responsibilities. It's always a two-sided process. And in Africa, I think it's very clear to everybody. I think the African Charter, when the authors of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights put it together, they said this Western concept that you have rights without responsibility doesn't make sense. It's a reciprocal relationships. Reciprocal between peoples, reciprocal between individuals, and reciprocal between the land and the people and the natural resources. Karl Kleinman, he always said to me, he was using the metaphor of tracking. He said, when you go out in the bush, you'll see traces of animals and birds and snakes and whatever. He goes, life has actually written for you everything that is dangerous and everything that's an opportunity. But if we blunder through that, then we will come to harm. But if you are quiet and watch how the universe, how nature is ordered, then you understand what the opportunities are, and you understand when to step back from harm. It's actually written in front of you, but it's the ego and the desire that blinds us to the real world. And paying attention to the intuitive world allows us to live well and mindfully, wisely within that the world that we are in. At a time when biodiversity indicators, the monitoring systems of the scientific monitoring systems of life on Earth are telling us that all ecosystems across the planet are in decline. Seagrass, glacial ice, grasslands, mountain landscapes, coral reefs, everything is suffering, everything is declining. The CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, just released their Global Biodiversity Outlook number 3. everything is worse. We are at serious risk. This is not a joke anymore. And at such a time, each one of us, and collectively, we need to say that we have to take action. You can't say it's somebody else's responsibility. We're all responsible. We're all interconnected. How you choose the action that you're going to take is something that you have to measure within your own ethical framework. I think you have to be wise within that. I think you have to engage with the elders in your community. You have to engage with other people. But at the end of the day, there has to be courage to do what is the right thing.